Archaic Records.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Archaic Records here with you again. My name is Jamie, coming to you from Nashville, Tennessee. Here to wish you a very happy Morrissey Monday, a celebration of all things Morrissey and the Smiths. And I realize it has been a few weeks since I posted a Morrissey Monday episode here on Archaic Records. I'm sure that you missed me. I said, I'm sure that you missed me. But, in my defense, it hasn't been all my fault. Things have been relatively hectic around here as of late, which I realize can come across as somewhat of a flimsy excuse. It doesn't make it any less true. And let's be perfectly honest with each other. This wouldn't be the first Morrissey-related show to be canceled based on a somewhat flimsy excuse. So let's just accept it for what it is. But even on a normal week for me, Sunday and Mondays are always my most crazy days. And as of late, my wife and I have been working on some stuff in our professional life that I think is relatively exciting, which has been eating up a lot of our times on Sundays and Mondays as well. So unfortunately, the Morrissey Monday segments here on Archaic Records have been forced to suffer a little bit, but it feels good to be back at it today. This is my favorite topic in all of the musical universe. This is my favorite show that we do here on Archaic Records. I am a very proud member of the Morrissey fan community. I love the Morrissey fan community. I'm very proud of the Morrissey fan community. So it's nice to be back in the saddle again, as people say, unironically, by the way, down here in Nashville, Tennessee. You really think this is the coolest place in the country to live? You really want to pack up your homestead and move down here to this landlocked hellhole with 1.5 million people that think that Morgan Wallen is pretty snug? I might reconsider if you're leaning in that direction, son. Anyway, without any further ado, let's get into this week's episode. For this week's episode, we're going to go back to 1984. April of 1984, to be exact, as we catch up with the band on tour, promoting their 1984 self-titled debut album. We are going to catch up with the band in Amsterdam. It is April 21st of 1984, and we are going to be taking a look at this live bootleg vinyl called This Charming Man in Amsterdam. And to me, this is an excellent live recording. It is a very interesting era of the band to go back and listen to live. I've always said this about the Smiths in their relatively brief career, that as the Smiths progressed as a band, they just continued to get better and better and better with each album and with each year's experience sort of under their belt on the live stage. And as much as I've loved this record, and I have always maintained that this is the greatest debut album of all time, bar none. I don't even think that that's open to debate, at least in my opinion. It is also, in my opinion, that this, of the 4 studio albums, is the weakest of the Smiths' efforts. I think as the band continued on, I think each album got better and better and better, with the exception of, I still will always maintain that I think The Queen is Dead is their greatest album, just because Strange Ways contains the song Girlfriend in a Coma, which isn't a song that I hate, but it's just a song that I can basically, never hear again. And those 2 albums are so close, in my opinion, quality-wise, that I think Girlfriend in the Coma sort of tips the scale in favor of The Queen is Dead. That's just my opinion. You don't necessarily have to agree with it. But, this is the greatest debut album of all time. And going back and listening to the band live during that era, it, to me, is similar to the studio albums, because as you go through and you listen to the band over the years, they just continued to get better and better and tighter and tighter. So going back and listening to the Smiths live in 1984, although it is really fun, and this is an excellent show and an excellent recording, this band hadn't quite reached, the height of their powers. What they had was they had proven that they had potential to become what they would become, which was the greatest band of all time. And going back and listening to a live recording from 1984 is a lot of fun, but there are points in time where the band haven't, got everything bolted down into place quite as well as they would moving later on. I really love this recording. This is, like I said, this is a very interesting time for me to go back and listen to the band. I've mentioned this before on this channel. I never got a chance to see the Smiths live. I was only 11 years old when the band broke up, so that was something that was just never in the cards for me. I've had this record for a few years. I ordered it off of, I think I just ordered it off eBay, to be perfectly honest with you, but this comes on this really awesome purple vinyl, which I think is pretty snug. And, like I said, going back and listening to the band during this era, I think is, hyper interesting. I think everything that the Smiths ever did is hyper interesting. But, like I said before, I never got a chance to go back and see the Smiths. And, sort of given a sort of a time machine scenario, I don't know that this would necessarily be, the first era that I would choose in terms of going back and seeing the band live. I would probably take seeing them. My first choice would obviously probably be the Queen is Dead tour, which is my favorite album by the band. And going back and seeing that tour and just seeing how incredible they were live during that era. Not to say that I would pass up an opportunity to see the band live in 1984, because I certainly wouldn't. But it wouldn't necessarily be my first choice. But this show on this record is excellent. This is a recording that was done originally for FM broadcast. So you basically get an album quality recording on this record if this is one that you happen to see in one of your local record stores or online, and this is not one that you have in your collection. I would highly recommend it. This album, sound quality wise, sounds awesome. Now, I love collecting bootlegs. Of course, I look for the ones that have the sort of FM, recording quality, but I even like the ones that, sound as if they were recorded in somebody's pocket. I'm not that picky. I just want to go back and hear as much of the live material, both from the Smiths and Morrissey's solo catalog, as possible. But this one is really good. And like I said, for me, this is a very interesting period in the band's history. I love this record. I love the fact that they are on tour promoting this record, and despite the fact that the band has some elements of their show, on this particular performance that get a little bit sloppy, I don't think they are necessarily as tight a live band at this point in time as they would become. This is a very good, fun, sort of playful performance. You get the sense that Morrissey is really well engaged, really in a good mood, and pretty much every song that the band performs throughout the set list on this record, at least, is done pretty much up to album quality. The first song on this record is Hand in Glove. Of course, Hand in Glove is a song about, two people that believe that their love is stronger than anybody else's. This is kind of like a post-punk, Romeo and Juliet, kind of an us against the world. This is a really good version of the song Hand in Glove. My one issue with the song Hand in Glove as far as the studio version is, I've mentioned in the past, I'm always a little bit wonky when it comes to the harmonica. I'm not a big harmonica guy. You can definitely way overuse the harmonica, in my opinion, and it's not on the live performance. The one thing you notice about this live performance is that Morrissey's vocals kind of fade in and out. Now, I don't know if that's just due to his, stage chicanery and goofiness, or if there was something going on with the sound during the very first song, but it's an issue that doesn't come up again in the entire performance. That's the only kind of dig that I would throw at this version of Hand in Glove, but it's pretty true to the studio version, minus the harmonica, and the band sound really tight. The second song after that is Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now. This one almost sounds identical to the recorded version of it. I really love this song. This is a song I've always liked. I love the lyric. I was happy in the haze of a drunken hour. That's something I can definitely relate to, especially if you go back to my younger years when I was more in my my drinking prime. I love how he talks about people that he has to smile at people who he'd much rather kick in the eye. That reminds me a lot of sort of my professional life, especially the place I work at now in my life. I work in a place that is very affluent, and people that can be a little bit not friendly and judgy, and honestly, at the risk of sounding kind of like a wuss, these people can be somewhat downright abusive. But it's my job because I work with the public, and I consider myself to be, generally pretty good at what I do, especially in terms of making people happy. I stand there with a sort of smile on my face, which I always tell people in what I do for a living, half of it, apart from what I do technically, half of what I do is being an actor and being sort of an ingenuine little slime, but that's just what you have to do in my line of business. But it always makes me think of what I do for a living when he talks about how he'd much rather kick people in the eye that he's forced to smile at, and that's what I go through on the daily basis. This version of Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now, though, it's almost like spot on to the recorded version. The third song on this recording is Barbers and Begins at Home. In between the song Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now and Barbers and Begins at Home, Morrissey proclaims that it is a tremendous honor to be here tonight. They go into Barbers and Begins at Home. Of course, this song is about corporal punishment. Growing up in a house that where you sort of feel as if you're a punching bag. Your mom comes home from work, you're sitting there minding your own business on the couch, and she just slaps you for no reason. You're like, what the hell was that for? She said, I know you did something today. It's just for what I didn't see. Sort of very relatable if you grow up in a house that, on its best days is chaotic, and on its worst days can be something much more sinister. I've always argued that Barbers and Begins at Home is the greatest bass line, maybe in the history of rock and roll, but certainly within the Smiths catalog, and it is performed magnificently on this version of Barbers and Begins at Home. And we've talked about this in the past on this channel when it comes to the Smiths and the rhythm section of Andy Rourke and Mike Joyce. I think Andy Rourke gets celebrated as being, a relatively elite bassist, where I feel like Mike Joyce is always diminished. I feel like he's always undersold. People always come at me with the attitude about Mike Joyce, oh yeah, anybody could do what Mike Joyce did. He didn't do anything special. But you go back and you listen to these live recordings. Even in 1984, when I would make the argument that the band wasn't as tight as they would become, listen to the rhythm section. They hold the whole thing together. I hold steadfast that without Andy Rourke or Mike Joyce, the Smiths are a totally different band. And, the bass track on Barbers and Begins at Home it's probably my favorite bass line of all time. I think it's probably the greatest bass line in the history of rock and roll. And you can snicker all you want. I really don't care what you think. And it's just performed magnificently on this live recording. And, Barbers and Begins at Home. Can we just talk about for a second how amazing this song is? And it just, again, I think it serves a purpose, because obviously Barbers and Begins at Home is off of, Meat is Murder. And Meat is Murder, to me, is such a big leap ahead of the 1984 self-titled debut album. And I love this album. This is the greatest debut album of all time. But I think it proves my point that the Smiths just continue to improve and evolve. I think Barbers and Begins at Home, especially when you hear it in this context with all these other songs from the first record, it just stands out as being better. It's just a better song than the stuff that was on the first record. I'm not throwing shade at the first record. I just think it happens to be true. This is one of the best songs, one of the best performances on this album, in my opinion. After that, they go into This Charming Man. Morrissey introduces the song on this during the show as a song about a bicycle. Obviously the song is about sort of self-sufficiency, or, why would you want to become self-sufficient? Why would you ever want to become a man? This is a very awesome, true to the album version of this song. I've always maintained that This Charming Man, to me, is basically a perfect song. If you were to make a compilation album of 30 perfect songs, this is on it, and this is not even close to being my favorite Smiths or Morrissey song of all time, but This Charming Man is a perfect song. This represents the style of music that I love the most. This is just a perfect, clean, precise post-punk, post-punk, 2.5 minute masterpiece. This is one of the greatest songs ever written. I don't care how many times I hear This Charming Man. I never get tired of it. I will never get tired of hearing This Charming Man. Every time this song comes on, I love it as much as the first time I ever heard it. And this version of it from 1984 in Amsterdam is just awesome. Johnny Marr's guitar playing on this version of it is just as clean and precise as it is on the record. And again, talking about the rhythm section, this has just been one of my, favorite little rhythm pockets in the history of the Smiths. This song is just perfect in every way, in my opinion. The next song after that, you can make the argument, is a little bit less perfect, at least in my opinion. That is the song Miserable Lie, which I've always thought that the song Miserable Lie was sort of about a disappointing, first sexual encounter. Join the club, son. But I've always, whenever I talk about the song Miserable Lie, I always tell people that I love the first half of the song. It's the second half of the song where Morrissey goes into those sort of seizure-inducing falsetto gymnastics where it sort of loses me. And on this recording in particular, he really extends that sort of falsetto part of the song. It just kind of goes on and on and on. I've read in the past that people thought that the vocal stylings on that song were sort of either a dig or a tribute to the band James, who of course the Smiths were associated with back in those days. But this is relatively true to the album version of Miserable Lie, except he takes it too far, in my opinion. And this is a song I've never seen live. I don't know that Morrissey has ever really played Miserable Lie live. I'm sure he has. Solo. I'm sure he probably has. I've never seen this song live. And of all the songs in Morrissey's catalog, and I've been to 12 shows in my life, so you've probably been to more than I have. It's not a competition anyway. But that's a song that I don't say this about many songs. But, if I never saw Miserable Lie live, I think I'd be okay with that. Unless he ever did a thing where, he were to go out and play this album in its entirety, which, it's its 40th anniversary this year, so theoretically you could. And if he did that, man, I'd sit through Miserable Lie to sit through seeing this whole album live. That would be pretty snug, in my opinion. All right, side one ends with the song You Don't Owe Me, I Don't Owe You Anything. This is a song about, basically, I think, about being shot down by somebody that you approach. Basically saying, the person says, I don't want to go out tonight, and just to kind of let you down easily, but you say to them, well, you go out every night, and, you've basically been leading me on, so you sort of owe me for my time. And the person says, I don't owe you anything. This is one of my favorite songs from this era. This is a very, sort of true version of it to the recorded album track. And on this particular version of it, As far as Morrissey's vocal performance, I think this is one of the best on this record. His vocal performance on this song is just like gut-wrenching. You can actually feel the rejection in the lyrics of the song on this particular performance. He really like pours his whole self into it. Not that he always doesn't, but I love the song "I Don't Owe You Anything." Like I said, that's one of my favorite songs from the early era of the band. Side 2 starts off with a song called "What Difference Does It Make?" Of course, this song is sort of about two lifelong friends. One friend finds out something about the other one that is sort of thought of as being a deal breaker, and unfortunately, the relationship sort of dissolves. And the song always, in a way, sort of makes me think of my relationship with my best friend Tim. He and I became friends back in middle school, 7th grade, and although we've been friends for 35 years. Can you believe that? Can you believe it's been 35 years? I can't. But we've definitely gone through some periods of static in our relationship. And there were times when I thought that our relationship was toast. I mean, I thought it was like, tits up. But we've always managed to somehow make things kind of come back together. And as things stand right now, I think that we are on as solid footing as ever. And I've heard people say, and I'm not disagreeing with this, I've heard people say that the secret that the one friend finds out about the other friend is that they are gay, which I don't disagree that is what's going on in this song. Now, sometimes, it's my opinion, that sometimes people overly, interpret Morrissey's songs as having homosexual connotation. Now, they may or may not. But this one, I could definitely see that being the case. And this version of What Difference Does It Make is awesome on this record. It is very true to the original live, or the original recorded version. If I was able to talk, it would help me get through these episodes a little bit more swiftly. Don't you agree? But I really love this song. This is another one of those songs. I mean, there really isn't, apart from Miserable Lie, which I still don't think is a bad song. There really isn't anything in this set list that isn't the Jugs, in my opinion. The next song after that is Girl Afraid. I've always thought that this song was about doesn't have to be a girl, either a boy or a girl, man or a woman, who is sort of afraid to express their romantic feelings towards somebody that they are attracted to. And something that, I've told this story on this channel in the past, that my wife and I, when we first met, was it 13 years ago, something like that? We worked together. We met working together. And supposedly, my wife kind of had a crush on me. I mean, how could you not, right? Look at this. How could you not? But she sort of always masked her feelings through this sort of, haze of, like subtle hostility. And I remember that her and I would have conversations, and I kind of felt this like negative vibe coming at me. And it turned out, as she told me later on, that she had sort of developed a crush on me, or feelings, however you want to describe it, and she had no idea how to sort of express those feelings. And when her and I first met, I was dating somebody, and after that situation sort of dissolved, then my wife sort of opened up a little bit more. And I remember specifically the night that it happened was her and I had gone to a friend's birthday party, and we were living in Santa Cruz, and we went to this bonfire, and it was awesome. And for some reason, I invited her back to my house. Not like that. Not like that. But her and I were going to continue hanging out. The beach closed relatively early, and we weren't done, hanging out that night. So I invited her to my house. I lived in a big house. There was plenty of room. There's plenty of room for her to crash on the couch. That was not my intention, okay? I'm not that much of a sleazeball. And we ended up hanging out that night, all night, sort of hanging out, and talking, and eventually the truth came out, and pretty much her and I have been together ever since. But I remember she used to mask her sort of feelings behind this kind of, sort of subtle hostility, and it got to the point to where I would actually just kind of like, poke her with a stick because I thought that she didn't like me anyway. And I have this sort of old man sense of humor, in case you haven't picked up on it. If you pay attention to this channel, why would you pay attention to this channel? I've got to know. So, and whenever I kind of make my old man jokes, still to this day, she finds it to be sort of embarrassing and, borderline irritating. So, and I knew this about her when we worked together, because I would make these old man jokes and she would just kind of give me this like death glare back. So, because I thought she didn't like me anyway, I played it up on purpose. I was like, oh, really? You don't like me? You don't like these jokes I make? Well, I'm just going to keep throwing them at you, because I got piles of these bad old man jokes. It's too bad I don't want kids, because I would have the best dad jokes of all time. But the song Girl Afraid is awesome. This is a pretty good version of it. I would make the argument that it's a little bit sloppy, but it's a good version of it. The next song after that is This Night Has Opened My Eyes. Of course, this song is about a young girl who is forced to give up her baby. This version of this song it's a little bit logy. It's a little bit fuzzy, and it's not quite as crisp as the studio version. I would make the argument that it is a little bit sloppy, but instrumentally it's a little bit sloppy, but Morrissey's vocal performance on this particular version of This Night Has Opened My Eyes really holds the thing together. Morrissey's vocal performance on this album is the jugs, and he's very playful throughout this entire performance. You get the sense that he is having a good time. He's in a really good mood. Of course, I don't associate 1984 Morrissey as being the cranky curmudgeon that we've all sort of gotten to know over the years at this point in time. But he's very playful. He seems to be in a very good mood. And his performance is just incredible. Now, during the song, This Night Has Opened My Eyes, he's not up there acting as a court jester. It's not appropriate for the lyrical content of this song, but his performance of it is just heartbreaking, and it's really the strongest point of the song. Instrumentally, I would make the argument that it is a little bit sloppy. The fourth song on side B is Still Ill. This is another one of my favorite songs from this era. This is a really sort of cool version of it. They definitely have, it's definitely a much better, tighter version than the version that they do of This Night Has Opened My Eyes instrumentally. On this song, again, I think this song really shows off the rhythm section. I've always wondered what the illness is that Morrissey talks about in this song. I've heard people suggest that it is depression. I've heard people suggest, again, that it's homosexuality. And as I said before, sometimes I think that Morrissey's songs get overly interpreted into the homosexual sort of, category. But this one, again, I could see it because, 1984, there was still a lot of taboo around things like depression and especially, homosexuality. So I could definitely see those both being kind of what he's talking about. That's, not necessarily my opinion, but I have heard people, say that that's what they thought the illness was that he's referring to in that song. The fifth song on side B is These Things Take Time. This is a song that I've always felt was about somebody who has a sexual encounter who is either a virgin or, relatively inexperienced, and they are entering into this situation with a much more experienced partner. And this song, I think, talks about the self-consciousness of sexual inadequacy. And again, this is another one of those songs that I could see it having gay connotations, because I've always heard people say that they thought that this song was about somebody's first homosexual encounter. Now, I don't know that that's necessarily true, but I do believe that this song is about a sexual encounter that makes the inexperienced party feels sort of, self-conscious and inadequate. I really love the song. These Things Take Time. This version of it, on this record, I would make the argument, sort of like This Night Has Opened My Eyes, is instrumentally a tiny bit sloppy. Once again, Morrissey's vocals, his performance really kind of puts a nice bow on it, though. It's very listenable. It's not bad, like I said. There isn't really a bad performance on this entire record, and the sound quality on this recording is, it's basically FM quality. The album ends with a song called Handsome Devil, which I think is about one of Morrissey's teachers as he was growing up, and it does not portray him in a particularly flattering light. I love the song Handsome Devil. This version of it is awesome. This is probably one of the better performances on the record. It closes out side 2. So if you haven't gone back and listened to A Charming Man in Amsterdam from April of 1984, I would definitely recommend going out and finding a copy of this at your next possible convenience. Like I said, it would be cool to go back and see the Smiths during any of their eras and sort of given a musical time machine scenario. I'm not necessarily saying that 1984 would have been my first choice. My first choice would have been to go back and see the Smiths during the sort of Queen is Dead tour, but I was only 11 years old when the band broke up, 11 or 12. So I was not in a position, and I grew up in a town where nothing ever happened. So the craziest thing that happened in my town was bingo night at the VFW halls. But anyway, go back and check out the 1984 in Amsterdam as the band was out promoting their 1984 self-titled debut album, the greatest debut album of all time, in my humble opinion. And of course, this week, some very exciting news coming out of the Morrissey camp. Well, not exciting news, but the reissue of Beethoven Was Deaf will finally be released just a couple days on vinyl and CD. I'm extremely excited to get my grubby mitts on this. I have never owned a copy of Beethoven Was Deaf on vinyl, and to me, it is one of the best live studio albums. It's one of the best live albums in Morrissey's catalog, and that, going back and seeing that tour, the Your Arsenal tour, would be something of extremely high priority for me. As I've mentioned before on this channel, my Morrissey fandom wasn't born until 1994, so I sort of missed out on that era of his career in terms of seeing him live. But I'm extremely excited for this reissue of Beethoven Was Deaf. I love that album. It's still one of my favorite live CDs in the Morrissey catalog. I mean, honestly, it might be my favorite live album of his. Now, I'm still a little bit unsure how I feel about the reworking of the album art, because I've always really loved the original album cover for Beethoven Was Deaf, but I'll just have to see it when it comes in the mail this week, because I think it looks cool. The new album cover does look pretty snug, but I've always loved the original artwork. So next week on Morrissey Monday, I will be kind of giving you my thoughts on the new reissue of Beethoven Was Deaf. I'm sure, having heard that, you are in the middle of rubbing one off right now. So I will give you a little bit of privacy and just tell you that I appreciate you checking out this video. This is Archaic Records. My name is Jamie, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee. Be sure to go out and support your local record store. Check back most weeks. I said most weeks, then. For Morrissey Monday, a celebration of all things Morrissey and the Smiths, as well as other record content and album reviews throughout the week. And I think that's it. So until next time, my friends, talk to you then.